All right, Herp House Rock, we have another great video for you today. Another species that we really want to get more information about, Sandboas. So we're here with Sandboas by Scott Miller. We have Scott Miller on tonight, so stay tuned for this one.
Cool. Scott, honestly, again, I appreciate you making time for this. We had talked a little bit at the St. Louis NARBC about bringing you on. It took a few extra weeks to get you on here, but again, Sandboas have always been one of those animals I've been a big fan of, so I'm excited to talk about them for a little while.
Yeah.
Compared
Cool.
to doing the,
Glad
hey,
to
how
be
did you
here.
get started? Oh, awesome. So when you started breeding, did you get right into Sandboas, or did you work with some other species and then slowly work your way into just Sandboas?
I had been keeping quite a variety of species, and Sandboas ended up being the first thing that I was able to breed successfully. So I just kind of rolled with it from there and gradually worked into almost exclusively Sandboas. I bought my first pair when I was like 18 years old. So this is like 1989, something like that, at Lee Watson's Reptile Show. I bought my first adult pair there. Just nice, normal, clean orange Kenyans, and never did anything special with them as far as cycling or anything like that. And just after having them for a year or two and getting them acclimated, I bred them, and I actually got to witness the birth and, watch them come out of the sacks and stuff. So it was really fascinating.
Now, I take it the first ones you got at that show, that was an adult imported pair that you acclimated, or were those juveniles or sub-adults?
They were a young adult captive bred pair. Even back in those days, it wasn't common to see imported Sandboas. I was told they were captive bred. I don't know if they actually were or not, but they were healthy, they were clean. And the guy told me I could take them home and put them together and breed them, but I figured it'd be better to let them acclimate and start feeding and settle into their environment and stuff. So, and they weren't quite full grown.
So when you first bred them,
I
was going to say, when you first bred them, were you intending to do that?
Yes. Yeah, I was trying to breed them.
I mean, a lot of those old stories, Dave's looking at me crazy. A lot of those old stories were like, well, I kept them together because I thought they should stay together, and then babies came out. I've heard that before.
I think you're going to be in timeout.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I deliberately bred them, put them together. I was separately and introduced them and all that stuff. So it was really a deliberate thing.
So way back then when you were working on these guys, did you do like a lot of us did in the beginning of the hobby? As soon as you made a little money off that first litter, did you pour it all back into more animals?
Of course, yes. I didn't live very far from Lee Watson's Reptile Swap, which at the time was like one of the few reptile shows out there. And I mean, you could find anything there really. And I also got really lucky because Dave Sorensen from the Milwaukee Zoo was there every month. And he was pretty much only a Sandboa guy. So I would spend the majority of the show talking to him, and he basically mentored me and took me under his wing and, steered me down the right path as far as how to keep them, how to breed them, and everything else.
So. Very cool. Well, I mean, considering the amount of time you've been putting into this, why don't you kind of tell us about like the years going by when different mutations started popping up, maybe when you had your opportunity to get your hands on certain things, and kind of just build us up to what's been going on the last 20, 30 years.
Okay. Well, in the beginning we had, normals, yellow normals, orange normals. At the time, there were still what were referred to as Egyptians, which were a northern quote unquote subspecies and stuff. And it wasn't till mid to late 90s when some of the random like anarthristics and albinos started popping up. The Barkers imported the first and only wild caught Paradox Albino. The anarthristics popped up simultaneously on the West Coast in two different collections. Lloyd Lemke, and then I think Giovanni, the guy from Bean Farm, I think. Was where those came from. And then the original albino was actually an Egyptian albino that Mark Bell crossed into Kenyans, which is how we ended up with like brighter orange and albinos and stuff like that. And then I think it was Jeff Holloway that produced the first snows in the late 90s or so. So back then, I'd sit and spend as much time as I could on the phone talking to different breeders, learning about, how to keep them, how to breed them, how the morphs are made and stuff. And then in 2000, the one and only imported pair of pure rufescent Sandboas was brought in. And Brian Emanuel was the gentleman that got him. He's in Florida, I think, and he bred them for a couple of years, and he also crossed them into regular Kenyans, which is where the stripe trait comes from. And that's how we ended up with like all the different stripes, striped albino, striped snows, and all that good stuff is from crossing rufescens into Kenyans. Then let's see, there's Jeff Holloway's paint, which is a recessive stripe trait. He started that from one wild caught male that he got back in like the late 90s, mid or late 90s, I think. And that's a hugely popular project that a lot of people work with, breeding different colors and varieties of paints and stuff. So there's Dodomas, which are a locality from the Dodoma Valley in Tanzania, and they're probably just in their pure form. They're probably one of the prettiest of the Kenyans. But when you cross them into the different morphs, it cleans up and brightens the color. It reduces the pattern, and just kind of improves the overall look of whatever you mix them with.
Okay.
So
Ben, you have something? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm looking at some of your pictures on Facebook, and I look at this, and I don't know a lot about Sandboas, and actually Ryan and we always talk about when I first got into the reptile hobby, and it was 2010, 2011. So I'm still young into it at all. But I said, Sandboas are going to be like the next big thing. They're going to be really huge, and they're popular, but they're not like crazy popular. I think that they should be more popular. But when I look at this stuff, I'm like, I don't really know a lot about it. Can you go through like, what it's like to breed them, and how many babies they have? What are what kind of substrates you use when you're pairing, when you're, how you incubate, the whole deal. Because I would love to learn. I mean, I see like a pile of babies, and it says in this caption that it's 17 healthy babies. I just didn't picture a Sandboa having that large of a clutch.
Litter.
They can actually. The largest litter that I know of with Kenyans is actually 42 or 43.
Holy crap!
See,
that's what I'm like. Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, that's from an exceptionally large female, but they can have. I mean, if you get a large female that's pushing 3 feet and 1,500 or 1,800 grams, you can get a huge amount of bait. But that's an exception. In general, most of the time you're looking at between 12 and 15 babies from an average of like a 350 to 500 gram female. As far as keeping them, they're really easy to keep. A dry substrate that they can burrow in, shredded aspen, Sanachip, Reptichip works really well. A lot of people are now using like play sand mixed with Eco Earth. Anything that they can burrow into, and they're happy. You can put some flat pieces of cork on the top of it and stuff for the extra weight to help them feel secure. And then all they really need is a water bowl. I know a lot of people will put, like if they keep them in tanks, they'll put all kinds of decorations and stuff for enrichment and stuff, which they'll seem to use. But and then as far as temperatures, they need a hot spot of like 92 to 95, an ambient air temperature of mid to high 70s. And that's really all you got to do with them. I don't do anything special to cycle mine, because going back to when I was younger, when I would talk to some of the breeders like Lloyd Lemke, Mark Bell, and stuff, and I would ask them like, well, what are you guys doing to breed them? And at the time, they were learning lessons kind of the hard way to not cool them at all and not take them off heat in the winter because they would come down with respiratory infections. And it's really hard to get rid of those in Sandboas once they get it. So I have never done much for temperature cycling, but I live in the Midwest and I keep everything in the basement. And what really encourages them to breed is just the air pressure changes between the seasons. And so I just kind of leave them, just leave them be. I leave their heat the same year round, but I don't do anything to manipulate the general air temperature of the rooms so that they can feel those pressures change. And that seems to be all that, at least for me, that seems to be all I need to do to get them to do their thing. But you can do nighttime temp drops and, like short month or 2 month cooling periods, but I don't want to risk anything getting a respiratory infection and stuff. So I just leave them be, and let them just follow the cycles of the Midwest, the Midwest seasonal cycles and the barometric pressure changes. So.
And what season do they breed in?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What's that?
I said, what season do they breed in?
They'll breed year round. Most of my stuff I usually pair up in late February, early March when it starts to change towards spring. I do have some things like my pure rufescens and my higher percentage rufescen animals. They prefer to breed in the fall, and they'll breed like crazy, like October, November, December, and then usually by the time I hit January, they've quit completely. But the majority of them will breed, late winter, early spring. But in different parts of the country, I know people that will pair them up earlier, and they'll breed, but you don't necessarily get babies sooner if you pair them up sooner. Like I can start pairing my stuff in December and January, but I'll still not get babies until August, September, like I normally would if I paired in March. So I stick with the late February, early March. That way the females, if they go off feed while they're pregnant, they're not off feed longer than necessary. So it's not as much stress on their body.
Okay. Are you guys able to track about how long it's going to take for them to have the babies based on like a post-ovulation shed?
If you catch them ovulating and catch the post-ovulation shed, it's usually 70 to 90 days that they'll have the babies after that.
Okay. That's not bad.
So it's not as long as like boa constrictors and stuff. Mm-hmm. But they only ovulate 24 to 36 hours, and being buried, unless you're digging them up, you're probably, most people don't actually see when they ovulate. So a lot of times people think, oh, my boa's been pregnant for 6 or 7 months, and that's not the case, and they won't. And from the time you introduce them, some of them will ovulate within a couple of weeks, and some of them it takes months of pairing before they'll ovulate and whatnot.
So not to interrupt you, Ben, really quick. So talking on your timeline though, so you said they really slow down on breeding around January, and you're getting a lot of your babies in July and August. I mean, you're not getting an ovulation until a couple months or a few months after you've already taken the male out.
Okay, no. Let me rephrase that. The majority of my Kenyans, when I have babies in August and September, those are from the pairings that I start in like late February, early March.
Okay.
The stuff that breeds in the fall, like the pure rufescens, I pair them up late October, early November. Usually by December or January, they've ovulated, so I get babies mid-March, early April. Most of my ovulations occur like with the March pairings. Most of my ovulations will have occurred by beginning of May, late April, early May. If I catch them, I don't tend to disturb them very much when they're breeding. I just kind of like introduce the males, then pull them out, feed everything, put them back in. I try not to disturb the females very much, because you never know if you're going to catch them locked up, and you don't want the animals to freak out and go in opposite directions and have a male damaged if they're locked up or anything like that. So I tend to just leave them alone, and if I'm lucky enough to catch ovulation, I'll make a note of it. Most of the time, I'll find the shed, but I won't actually witness the ovulation.
Gotcha.
Make better sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I had a quick. Sorry, I know, Dave. I'm jumping in a lot.
Do it up,
Okay.
bud. You're good.
Do you think that with like ball pythons, we noticed that for us they breed year round, but if a female lays in June, let's say, then she kind of always lays in June. They're pretty close to right around when they lay. They just always seem to. Do you think that that's similar to Sandboas, where if it just happens to be that they're locking up now and breeding, but if you were to have one that you paired in like say June, you started pairing in June, maybe that they would go in say December or something like that. Do you think it's anything like that, or you suspect something like that?
No, I don't. I don't think it's. I don't think so. Because a lot of like if I do certain pairs repeatedly, it'll all depend on when they the male will lock up with them and stuff. I've not noticed that same thing with Sandboas really. The full month. I've never really noticed that, but that would be something for me to go and look at my dates and stuff and my records and see. But I don't seem to recall that being a pattern.
So, with some of your animals, okay, so I got a few questions about this. So, what percentage of your females will go every year when you do your pairings? Are you at a real high percentage, like 70 or 80, or is it like a 50% ratio?
I usually probably get about 75, 80% that'll go. There's always a few that either don't take or slug out or whatever, but usually I probably get about 75, 80% that are successful.
Okay. Now with your males, are you keeping one-on-one pairing throughout the whole season? A lot of separation for feeding. How are you doing your rotations?
With Kenyans, with almost all of them, I just do one male, one female. If I do use multiple males, I'll use like males with the same genetics, so that I can, I'll have, so I know what the genetics of the offspring will be. With my rough scale, I tend to do them in groups, like 3-4 pairs together at a time, just because with multiple males, it's like with I get a lot less. And what I'll do is I'll introduce them, and I usually leave them all together, whether it's in groups or pairs. I'll leave them together for usually 7 to 10 days. I'll separate them, feed everything, give them 24 to 48 hours to digest, and then I'll put them all back together. And I'll do that, say, right at the beginning of March. I'll do that all the way up to beginning or middle of June sometimes, depending on if I'm still getting anything that shows interest. But usually by late May, early June, the males have completely lost interest. The females are starting to show signs of being pregnant. But there's always a couple that'll have like late ovulations. Like I had a couple this year that, all summer long looked like they didn't take, and then all of a sudden, as it got towards August, oh, okay, they're ovulating. So they just, for whatever reason, it took them longer to get the right environmental cues to ovulate and finish production. But I had 3 females do that for me. And they were like the latest and the last crop. So
okay,
I'll introduce it, but it seems like the key is I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're okay. I was gonna just ask you with those animals that were the variable for you. If there was maybe a different location in your rack system, a little closer to the ground, where maybe they were a little cooler. I didn't know if there was something you happened to notice that maybe they were a little off track compared to everybody else.
The only thing is they're like, one female was on the very bottom of a rack, and then the other female was near the top of a rack. Actually, the other female that I'm thinking of was kind of lower bottom of the rack too. So I think it might just be rack positioning. Because there's never a solid, consistent temperature gradient, especially in a 6.5, 7 foot tall rack. There's always variables and stuff, but there's it's not a super tall room, but there's this the temperature difference between the top couple feet and the bottom couple feet. So it's probably just location of the rack, what made them go longer than the other girls.
Okay. Gotta talk about breeding some more. Let's jump back into morphs just for a second and kind of go around a little bit. So are a lot of these mutations considered hybridizing? Because you mentioned the first albino was not a Kenyan. I think it was the roof, or I'm saying this wrong, roofins or roof, how do you say that?
The rufescens, yeah.
Rufescens. Did you say that's how the stripe line
we usually just say roof. Yes.
Right.
I guess technically, yeah, it would be they've changed the classification of them, so like if you technically now, I guess it wouldn't be considered as much of hybridizing as it used to be. But I guess it depends on which classification you follow, if you're more into the older stuff or the newer stuff. But at least with the rufescens and the Kenyans, those are pretty much always considered hybrids. Egyptian and Kenyan are very, very close. And all 3 are actually the same species now. So, yeah, but there's like if you put a Kenyan and an Egyptian next to each other, most people aren't going to be able to tell the difference. If you put a pure rufescent and a Kenyan next to each other, there's a ton of differences. So I don't know what criteria they use to designate species or not, but the Rufescens always made it as crosses or hybrids, just because there's so much morphological differences between a pure Rufescen and a pure Kenyan. So
Interesting. And what about the Paradox Albino? Now, was that something that came from Kenya?
Supposedly the first one, the Paradox Albino, was imported by the Barkers. It came in with a shipment of Dodoma Valley Kenyans from Tanzania. I don't think there's like 100% accurate documentation of where it came from, just that it came from that valley. So whether it actually did or not, nobody's ever going to know for sure. But there was only the one that was ever imported, and they bred it to a normal produced het, and then people bought the hets, etc., and whatnot. From the original question, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. We're just kind of bouncing around talking about,
what was
just where the origin was and so forth, just out of curiosity.
Okay.
Well, let's.
all the Paradox Albinos are.
Oh, I'm listening, bud. You're
all
good.
All the Paradox Albinos are original. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm sorry. All the albinos are from that one. There's lots of outcrossing and all. One animal that started that whole, all the paradoxes we have now. So,
okay. And the albino line and the paradox line are not compatible. There is a double homozygous form when you breed the two together and then breed the hets back, right?
Yes, you do end up with a double visual when you bring them back together. Yeah. I've seen some that there's a couple of people that have produced them. It's a neat looking animal, but it's unfortunately mixing stuff like that. Eventually someone may or may not include all of the description of the genetics, and people either don't produce stuff they were expecting or produce stuff they weren't expecting, but no, they're not compatible. So you get a double visual.
Okay.
And I know there's double visual Paradox Albinos. I think there's a double visual Paradox Snow out there also.
Interesting. So we've talked about Sandboas a little bit in the past, and from outside looking in and trying to understand genetics, it seems like a lot of Sandboas stuff doesn't really play by the rules. And what I mean by don't play by the rules is there's really no other reptile out there where we've proven out in albino form where a paradoxin has been genetic. There may be something else I'm not thinking of, but outside of Sandboas, I'm unaware of any actual true genetic paradoxine. And then talking about the paradoxin with those guys, you can't see the paradoxine in the normals of the anearthristics, but you can in the snow form, which I thought was kind of peculiar. You would think that paradox would pass on, but apparently it's something that's really linked into the albinos. And other things I always found peculiar is, like, I have very few Sandboas here, but one of my Paradox Snow Sandboas does not have pink eyes. It has silverish blue eyes, which doesn't make any sense for your typical snow boa, or snow of any kind. So I find, like I said, I find them very fascinating, but I don't really fully understand how the genetics are working. Even if we're just talking the eye color with the snow boas being that silver color, I don't understand that. And I think we might have talked about this a little bit when I saw you in St. Louis.
I think so, yeah. Paradoxin Sandboas is the only reproducible recessive paradoxing that's out there. It's the only species that I'm aware of that it's reproducible. And to produce those or paradox snows, it's the same anery. which is kind of interesting. Have to have, I mean, obviously the paradox, the anery has to be het for albino or paradox albino, but it's the same anery trait that will produce snows and paradox snows. In the paradoxes, normally paradox snows have black eyes. They have very dark eyes. If it's got silverish gray eyes, then that usually means it's carrying like a hypomelanistic trait, which going back to the Barkers, they would randomly produce like weird peach colored lighter animals, and then when they bred those, they would produce what they called what Tracy called mother of pearl paradoxes, because they would be different than the like your regular orange and white or orange color paradoxes. And one of the keys to seeing that is the eye color. You'll see it in the paradox albinos and the paradox snows. Even normal hypos, they have like a silvery bluish gray eye color to them, and it completely stands out from, it's totally different looking. It's, you can't miss it compared to the eye color of like regular paradox albinos and paradox. So.
Okay.
And the hypo is also a recessive trait. So.
Interesting. So generally, you guys don't have. I mean, what was the last mutation on record for Sandboas? Like, it's been a long time since anything new's really come in with those guys, right?
As far as like a completely new thing, it's I think the newest thing is the splash paint combinations over the last couple of years. Those are probably the most recent ones. Is the hypo splash? The paint and splash combination. I think that's the newest one that's out there. And even that's been a couple of years that came out. So
the Splash Project.
Jeff Holloway did those. It's got to be about 3 years now. I think it might be a little bit longer than that.
All right. The Splash Project is a reduced pattern, and the Paint Project is considered a wide stripe of some sorts, from what your description was earlier.
Pretty much, yeah. Splash is basically the equivalent of pied and Sandboas, like you have pied ball pythons. In Kansas, Bell was the first one to produce them, and he called them Splash. But it's pretty much the Sambo. Paint is normally just a back. There's also what's referred to as Gene X, which is like a reduced pattern paint. It seems to be a separate gene, and what the Gene X does is it is the pattern and kind of opens it up, and it removes the eye stripe and lightens the color of the head. But that's also something you can get by mixing in Dodoma or cow flame. Also, you can get the same results. Okay. But the Gene X is something that popped up in Jeff's paint breedings, and it's like it's like a more extreme version of a paint.
Okay. Interesting. So with your collection right now, what kind of direction are you going in? Are you just kind of dabbling? Because I've seen your table at Tinley a lot too, and you got a really great variety. Are you kind of just doing a little bit of everything, or do you have something that you've really been excited about and putting a lot of focus into? Maybe something a little more line breeding with these guys?
I'm kind of focusing more on mixing my splatter trait into stuff, I'm working on mixing the hypo trait into other morphs and my splatter trait into other morphs. And I've been doing a lot of stuff with, but Paradox is one of my favorites. So I'm doing a lot of mixing with like Paradox hypos and Paradox splashes and Paradox splatters.
Okay. Now, splatter is something I'm not aware of. Is splatter saying that you originated? I don't know if you said that as we were talking.
Splatter originally came from, well, it originated from animals from Mark Bell, and a gentleman by the name of Peter Rushton had it pop up in his collection with his anarthristic Sandboas, and he played with it. He's the one that proved it to be recessive. Gotten some from him over a few years. And then at one point he decided to kind of let go of the whole project, and I got everything else that he had. And basically what it is it's a recessive pattern reducing gene, but it's got variable expression similar to Lash or Paradox, where you just never know how reduced the babies are going to be. And usually in my litters, I get kind of a mix across the spectrum. I'll get some with very pattern reduction, and then I'll get some that are like, 60-70% white. But you kind of never know what you're going to get with it. So it kind of makes it a little more interesting. It's the anticipation with what's going to show up in the litters. So.
Really cool. Now, have you found by breeding some that are more reduced, you get more reduced babies? Anything with line breeding with that?
In general, yeah. If I breed more reduced animals, I tend to get a higher percentage of reduced animals and better reduced animals in the litter. I've also been able to do stripe paradox stuff. I've got kind of within the paradox where I get a lot of higher expression stuff, and a lot more, and especially with the stripes, I get a lot more black. And usually with stripes, the black is more fine, and then with the Paradox Albinos, it's bigger blotches and stuff. But a lot of my stripes, I'll get bigger spots on too. So.
Okay. So a majority of the genes in Sandboas are going to be recessive outside of the stripe project. Or are there any other codominant genes in Sandboas?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Stripe is the only one that is not recessive. Everything else is recessive. So
interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, right. That's really a colubrid thing over anything. I find with most colubrid projects I've always worked with, everything tends to be recessive. Most pythons and boas I've seen, there's been a, good mixture of both, I feel.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad thing. So let's see here.
There's a couple traits. There's a couple traits that I guess they're referred to as polygenic, like the HRP, the Holloway reduced pattern aneries. I've seen those described as polygenics. There's also a trait called vanishing pattern. It's a lot, so it doesn't seem to be recessive. So I'm not sure if that's line bred or if it'll turn out to be something else. But yeah, most of it is recessive. So.
Okay.
So, and maybe I'm jumping around a little bit, but so you've been doing Sandboas for 30 years. Why?
Almost, yeah.
So, if you could talk to anybody and say, "Hey, you should get into Sandboas," like what makes you want to do? Work with them. What drives your passion? What do you tell people to let them know that Sandboas are so awesome? Like, what's the big selling points aside from that? They're really easy to work with. What do you tell people?
You know, I just, to me, I've always found them to be one of the most fascinating species of snakes. I've always found them very, more fun to work with than a lot of other stuff. They're easy care. I mean, they're practically indestructible. But just the head shape is so fascinating. The eyes are placed differently. I mean, it's most extreme in like Arabian Sandboas, where the eyes are literally almost on top of that. But you know, for such a small, stout snake, I mean, the burrow so quickly into any type of substrate or ground cover. The fact that like the back third of their body, the scales are keeled. Normally you have either all smooth or all keeled scales, but with Kenyans, you've got both on one snake. They're little, they're shovel shaped heads. They're stout little torpedo bodies. They've got the stubby little tails. They're shy, they're secretive, they're kind of antisocial, so I identify with that. They're just when you can look at a tub or a cage, and basically it seems empty, and then if you look real hard, all you see is like the eyes and the tip of the nose kind of peeking out of the substrate. They're because they're waiting for food to come by. Ambush predator. And I for some reason I just connect with them, and I've always found them more fascinating than everything else. So
that's great.
Yeah, you don't have to explain your passion. I mean, we all have reasons we like certain things, and a lot of times it's just something that it kind of imprints on us early. Colombian boas were kind of my thing back in the day. I love boa constrictors. I got my first one when I was 8 years old, and I think that'll probably be the last thing I ever breed in the hobby is gonna be boa constrictors. So just like I said, imprinted early. But so again, man, 30 years working with the same species is really awesome. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the highs and lows. Do you feel like it's been a pretty consistent 30 years? Do you feel like lately they've been peaking a little bit in interest, or do you feel like they've kind of always been where they've at in the hobby?
Oh no, the interest in them and the popularity has grown massively, like in the last probably 5 to 10 years. It's just, I don't want to say it's exploded, but it's way more than it used to be. I mean, like in the beginning, you hardly ever saw them at shows. Hardly anybody worked with them. There wasn't a lot of information about them and stuff. I mean, and now, I mean, you got, I don't know how many Facebook groups dedicated to them. There's tons of people, pets, or they breed them. If you look on like Morph Market, like there's over 450 individual ads for Sandboas. And, in the heyday of like, king snake fauna, whatever, I mean, you never saw, I mean, hell, on king snake, you were lucky if there was 40 or 50 ads Sandboas on there. And, it was easy to recognize almost everybody who was breeding them, because there was, a handful of people that were consistently producing them and stuff. And now, there's so many people working with them and reproducing them, and combining different morphs or improving existing morphs and stuff. And I think they're going to continue to get popular, and they're a great starter snake for adults and for kids, and especially for people who are nervous about snakes. They tend to be less fearful of the appearance of a sandboa, just because it doesn't have that typical snake shape. So I think they're just going to get more and more popular and become, I mean, you'll never see as many Sandboas at show as you do crested geckos, ball pythons, and stuff, but you see a lot more now than you ever did before. So I think it's a great thing. So
yeah.
I agree in the popularity, and just the popularity of this hobby altogether has grown a good bit in the last 10 years, in my opinion. Shows, there's more shows than ever before, more avenues to sell online, and I mean, a lot of people that we sell to nowadays are saying they want to be future breeders. So yeah, I mean, the hobby's always ever growing. And honestly, I think Holloway stuff is always something that, of course, caught my attention. The Splash Project and the Pain Project is something that I've always thought was really amazing. I really love a nice reduced pattern animal. His extremely high weight reduced anurothristics we were talking about earlier, I think are really amazing. They almost look like little cows. But I think from the outside looking in on a species that I haven't worked with yet, I will say the reduced pattern anurothristic stuff has always been something that's been very eye-catching for me. And if I was going to get into them, I think I'd probably start there and maybe just focus on that.
I think that's one of the more popular things I produce is the reduced pattern anurothristics. Get quite the extreme results that Jeff does. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing prettier than a nice, clean, black and white anery that, especially when you get into reduced pattern ones.
Yeah.
But even like
go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. But even like I have a line of wide stripe granite anner that I work with, and like the whole back is just an open, wide grayish white stripe, and they've got tons of speckling down the sides, and there's very few actual like dark blotches. And those are real popular too. But any anery that's got a lot of white to it, whether it's striped or reduced pattern, people love them for some reason. So.
Yeah.
Earlier, you were talking about rough scale. Are you talking about rough scale Sandboas, or are you talking about different species altogether?
I'm sorry, rough scale Sandboas. Yeah.
So, is this one? I'll bring it up on the screen here. Is that a rough scale?
That's Egyptian.
Egyptian. I don't know anything about Sandboas. I need to learn because I see the different head, and I don't know.
No, that's a rough scale.
Is it? Oh, I'm the idiot now.
That's one of my rough scales.
So, what makes? I mean, why are they called rough scales? Like, are they? You're talking about having keeled scales, third of the way down the body. Are they not keeled, or are they all keeled, or what makes it a rough scale compared to?
They're all keeled.
They're
on
all
rough
keeled?
scales. On rough scales, the full body is keeled. Yeah, so
that's pretty cool.
Okay. So how is this market overseas? Is there anything really unique going on in Europe? Have they caught on in Europe yet? Is there anything in the Asian markets going on with these guys?
Yeah, let's see. There's in Europe. There's a guy that's working on albino Saharans. I believe he's produced hats. There's a lot of amazing rough scales that I've seen pictures of in India, including albinos, but I don't think we'll ever get any of that over here because India doesn't let go of any of their wildlife. There's a lot of amazing just natural very wild variations of rough scales, and there's, I believe, the last time I looked, there was 2 different albinos, rough scales, but pretty much, as far as I know, we have the majority of the stuff here.
So I have Ben questions a little bit. I don't know. Are we ready for some Ben questions or no?
Whatever that means, we're gonna roll with it. Go for it, bud.
So you've been doing this for a while, and you've been going to shows for a long time. What were the shows like when you first started vending at shows? Like, what was your first show that you vended at, and what was it like, especially bringing Sandboas?
The first vended at was one of the Lee Watson shows up in Streamwood, Illinois. And it was, well, his shows took place in a barn on his farm, so it was really hot, really crowded, really dusty. But he always drew an enormous crowd, and the variety of animals that was there, reptile wise, was amazing. And it was kind of neat because so many people would stop and look, and they're like, "Oh, I've never heard of Sandboas." So I did a lot more like educating and showing them off more than selling. But that's a lot of the fun of going to shows, is just meeting people and talking to them about, what we like to work with and stuff. The first Tinley show, like I walked in and I think I made like 10 feet in the door, and I just stopped. I was just like, wow. A visitor that weekend, and it was amazing to see in one place. And like I knew like Mark Bell and some of the other people there. They used to go to the Lee Watson shows. So like to be able to hang out and talk to like Mark Bell and some of the other people that have been doing it for so long, and like just to see so much different stuff. Like I remember the first Tinley, there was a pair of Grays monitors. And I'm not a huge monitor guy, but even I knew, like, holy shit, like, you don't ever see these. And just stuff that I see in TV or books or whatever, and be able to look at in a container up close and stuff, and just amazing. And I miss that variety of species. It goes to what you see now, but now there's so many morphs to look at and so many genetic combinations. Just so many strange and bizarre colors and patterns that that we've been able to create. It kind of makes up for the lack of variety in species. But it's a shame that like the younger generation didn't get to see like how shows used to be, but maybe that's just because I'm older. So.
Oh no, I mean, I got to do the big show for me early on was the Daytona show, and that was like the mid 2000s. And walking into a building like that, I was mind blown because I was doing the Cleveland show, the Columbus, Ohio show. I had made it out to a few White Plains shows, but to see Daytona, like it really set the bar very high for any other show I ever went to. And like you said with Tinley kind of does the same thing. And I'm not sure you made it to the West Coast yet, but even the Pomona show, like I always thought that, everyone always said the Pomona show was the biggest show, but I was like, no, there's nothing bigger than Tinley. Pomona is huge. It's a unique show. Very interesting group of animals there.
Really?
It's so last time I set up at that show, he fit me in as a last minute table. I was at the very back of the building. There wasn't even anybody in the building yet. You couldn't even see the front door. Like from the back to the front of the building, it was so fucking far away. Like I'm like, no one's gonna see my table. We're gonna make no money this weekend, but the crowd was incredible. We did very well. I plan on going back to some in the future. We probably would have done one this past year if it wasn't for the whole Corona thing and everything getting canceled. But Pomona is a very special show. I've always been a big fan of Pomona just because you'll always see something there you'll never see somewhere else. Just something about that show. There's always a unique species. Hell, that's where I found out about the whole isopod craze. I didn't think isopods were a thing until I did the Pomona show, and then it was isopod stuff everywhere.
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 We just got into a bunch of them.
Everybody. It's just, everyone's going crazy. Mike brought one of his little toys with, man. I got a couple of the toys at the house. Like, isopods are just in this, like, for now. But, so let's get back to a little more care stuff, just because, again, you know, Sandboas are a really easy species, and you know, I always make the joke that the ball python's the gateway drug into the hobby, but then as we kind of go along, we find something else we're interested in, and we start pursuing it. So you said a few different substrates. What substrate do you prefer? Like, how are you keeping your animals? Are you keeping the adults on the same substrate you're keeping your babies on?
To chip for all of almost everything, or excuse me, Sanachip, the real fine little aspen chips. I use that for babies and adults. I keep everything on it. You know, you don't have to have a super thick layer for them to burrow through. They feel secure. It's really clean. You just, you know, you run a scoop through it and scoop out the stuff. It's real easy to mist a corner down over the for when they're shed to help them shed if they need it. It's a super easy substrate. And for me, with a large collection, very cost effective and time efficient, because you know I can get a lot of stuff done in a relatively less amount of time. Whereas if I use, you know, something else that was more time intensive to clean and stuff. But I know there's people that do bioactive substrates with them. You know, ReptiChip is another good one with the coconut husk. But I prefer Sanachip just because it's real easy to clean. You know, it's just easy to handle. So
Okay. I mean, we keep a lot of our Klubers on Sanachip. I'm a big fan, and we actually just switched our baby ball pythons over to Sanachip recently. We had seen, I believe it was, I don't know, one of the bigger companies were doing it. So we're kind of experimenting. Like you said, when it comes to spot cleaning, very easy, clumps up really nice. I wouldn't want to keep the adults on it, but for babies, I find I really like it on the babies. So with these guys being a very low humidity animal, I take it more than anything, hydration is all that matters. Benjamin, if you got, are we paused right now? Because if we're doing this, you can let me know.
No, I'm saying I wanted to ask about the eating when you're done.
Oh, gotcha. Because you gotta let me know what's going on when you're just fucking doing this. Okay, I don't understand.
Like it's a dance, you know. Don't...
Yeah, that's not what we need. It is nice, but I do like it. I do like it. All right, go ahead, man.
Now he lost the question because
they're actually a higher humidity. They actually need higher humidity than we'll think. You know, they're from equatorial Africa, so you know the surface air is probably relatively dry, but they spend most of their time underground and in burrows where it's a different microclimate and the humidity is going to be significantly higher. They really need 50-60% humidity to actually stay healthy and do well. So
makes sense.
So you had mentioned adding a little water in the corner of the container. I mean, are you putting any kind of humidifier in your room? What are you doing to keep your humidity where you want it?
I just use larger water bowls. I'll put them closer to the heat. My household furnace has a humidifier on it, so I'll turn that up to like 65% or so, like to the higher end of where you're supposed to set it. But I bowls, and when I fill them, I'll kind of maybe spill a little bit or you know, shoot a little water to the back wall of the tub over the heat. But it, you know, it seems to stay around, you know, 40-50% most of the time. Sometimes in the summer it gets a little higher, but You know, I try and keep it around about 50% for them so that they, you know, they have good shed, you know, they don't just dry out and stuff. So
Cool. Yeah, because every once in a while you see a real tragic picture of a baby Sandboa on Facebook where it's just the shed has literally constricted the animal to the point where it almost looks like it's dead and it can't even move. And with most desert species, you wouldn't think that, but you're right. With all these microclimates, you know, they are absorbing moisture from in between stones and being underground that a lot of people don't put into consideration.
yeah, it's, you know.
Ben, you had some feeding questions, right? Or
yeah. So, do you typically feed like frozen thaw? I'm guessing mice hoppers, or do you do rat pups? Like, what do you start your animals on, and or like the babies, and what do you feed the adults, and how often?
Babies I'll start right on like week-old pinky mice. And I'll feed them every 5 to 7 days. I like to get babies past the pinky stage, you know, and into like peach fuzzies where they're getting more nutrition and stuff. The adult males I'll feed just regular fuzzy mice. Adult males I'll feed 3 weeks. Babies and, you know, juvenile subadults I'll feed weekly. Adult females I usually feed every week to every 2 weeks. Some of the larger females every 2 to 3 weeks because they are pretty lethargic and it's real easy for them to end up overweight. And, you know, a heavier female is not going to breed. It's not going to have more babies. It's going to be, you know, you're going to have more complications with them while they're pregnant and stuff. And actually, some of my biggest litters that I got this year came from females that were slightly on the slimmer side and weren't even like, you know, they were just average size females. Nothing monstrous. They're probably 350 grams, 375 grams. And some of them I was getting 18 babies from, which was, you know, way higher than I thought that. But, you know, like it's real easy for Sandboas to become overweight because, I mean, they'll eat, you know, I mean, they'll eat every time it's offered if they can. And they have kind of a natural, you know, round, plump body shape to them. So, but I find, especially like with males, slimmer males are much more aggressive breeders than, you know, than you know, not than obese ones. And I get, you know, same thing with females. I get better litters out of, you know, you know, slightly not thin, but more healthy females, more healthy looking females. And, you know, everybody, unfortunately, and I'm sure it's in every aspect, but everybody is so obsessed over what an animal weighs as opposed to how an animal looks. And, you know, it's two totally different things. And I mean, I've seen people brag about, you know, oh, I have this 750 gram female. Yeah, but it looks like shit. It's underweight. And people think, oh, my 300 gram female is too small to breed. Well, it might not get bigger than 300 grams. And if people just eliminate the weights and the scales and just focus on learning what a healthy specimen of whatever species they're working with look like, I think a lot of people would have a lot more success with. I definitely think the captive populations of animals would be way healthier than what they are. You know, it's just you know, the gram weights or whatever, just random numbers that we assign to things. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean anything to the actual health of the animal. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I got sidetracked from your question, but I'm sorry.
No,
that was
really good
answer.
information.
You know, and I think we all agree, or most of us agree, you know, again, kind of going back to the ball python notion, you know, we've learned in ball pythons, obesity is not an issue. But in boa constrictors, in my experience, just like you said, lean track star males are amazing breeders. Larger males that are maybe a little more on the heavy side tend to be a little more lazy. Same thing with female boa constrictors. It's even becoming more common practice now to breed them at an older age in a lighter weight compared to back in the day. It was 2.5 to 3 years old. The animal needs to be at least 10 pounds and we'd start breeding it. But obesity in females, there's just so many negatives. We recently had a boa die. When something goes wrong here, we like to know what happens. So we'll typically open the animal up. And this was Cheryl and Mike's doing. I'm not a big fan of dissecting things, honestly. But we got the animal open and we found a lot of built up fat deposits on the heart. So more than likely, that was the cause of death, was all that built up fat inside the animal that was just really unnecessary. It was never really an animal that was overfed. It was an animal we had already bought as an adult, but you could tell that was the reason for death. Other than that, there was really no other explanation that we could find when they had the animal open. So like you said, with gram weight and this, and obesity or overfeeding, I wouldn't have thought that you could power feed a sandboa, but the way you're talking, and again, being a desert species, is it a fairly easy species to power feed if you wanted to?
Oh yeah. It's real easy to just. I mean, I've seen people that have gotten a little baby, and in a year and a half, it's 200 something grams, and I mean it's not, it like summer sausage, or something like that. I mean they'll grow rapidly if you feed them. Um, but feeding them that much to make them grow that fast, you're cutting years off of their life, and you're doing unknown terrible damage to their internal organs, stuff like that. And and it's they just don't have much food. They come from harsh environments that their bodies are adapted to go farther with less fuel. And it's like stuffing a sausage casing. When you feed them that much, they just expand. And I'm sure it's horrible for their internal organs. But that's the thing with Sandboas is they're harder to it's kind of harder to tell when they're obese because they're round snakes. Like with boa constrictors, you can tell because the healthy boa has kind of a bread loaf profile to their body. So you can tell when it starts to kind of melt down the sides, and it's just sort of bleh. And I've seen videos of boas like that, and I don't understand how someone, like, how do you not notice that and not think, shit, I'm feeding too much. But with Sandboas, because it's not as obvious when they become obese because they don't show signs like that. So
you had mentioned a 3-foot Sandboa earlier, and I think I remember way back in the day, and the picture still could be up there, but Dave and Tracy on their website had some absolutely giant animals. Some of the biggest ones I've ever seen, I feel like I saw on their webpage. Are they the one who set the record for the largest litter?
No, I don't remember what their largest litter. The female you're referring to, a friend of mine named Tommy Hill in Alabama, he had a female that it was 42 live and 1 stillborn, a few years ago, from a female that was real comparable in size to the one you're referring to on the Barker's website. Just a monstrous female. He's the one that had 42. I know there's a couple other people that have had litters in the mid to high 30s. I think the biggest litter I ever had was like 28 or 32. And I had a javelin Sandboa have 26 or 28 babies once, which was insane. I didn't know javelins could even have that many. But Tommy's the one that had the litter of 42, and I don't think anybody topped that yet. But I mean, it would take a huge female to do. Excuse me. But I don't think the Barkers have any other photos on their webpage anymore. Looked a couple times in, like to show people when I'd be doing stuff, and I haven't been able to find. Sad they took them down. I don't know why they did, but oh well.
Yeah, people update their website. I mean, they got completely out of Sandboas, if I remember right, somewhere. I think maybe somewhere around 2005 to 2008, maybe somewhere in there, they completely got out, if I remember right. I could be wrong, but I know it was around that time frame. But no, gosh, you're free to go with this.
I have a question. I have an
Go
odd
ahead, bud.
question. Has anybody ever tried to hybridize like Sandboas with something else? I know it's gonna sound a little crazy. I'm just thinking while we're talking, my mind goes a little wandering, and I'm like, oh, if you produce that with like a red tail or something like that, if it was a big and a small or whatever, the goofy looking face that would be on that stick would be ridiculous. I was just wondering.
I don't know if anybody's ever tried like say a Kenyan to a red tail boa or something. I know there's been people that have tried to do like a Kenyan in a rough scale, but I've never one being successful with it.
Dave
I've never heard of like a Kenyan in a rough scale or a rough scale in an Indian or anything like that being successful.
Okay. I do like the weird oddities. You are right.
It'd be neat. There's a species in India.
Good. Go ahead.
There is a species of some called Whitaker Sandboa. It looks between an Indian and a rough scale, but it's its own species, and I don't know of anyone that's ever kept in captivity because they're from India. And but I've seen pictures, and they're really neat. But it looks like a cross between an Indian and a rough scale. So
okay. So nothing super outrageous
I
like
don't
the
know
Boa
anybody.
blood python crosses or anything like that. I didn't mean to say that. We see Boa Anaconda Crosses, which was a really odd one. There was the blood python. Oh hell, I think blood python to ball python, Burmese python to ball python. All that stuff was pretty wild. People don't really go that route anymore. Though. That was back when we were experimenting and people were just doing whatever the fuck they wanted, pretty much.
Yeah.
like the 70s. Yeah, never done anything like that with Sandboas that I know of. I know, like, I've seen people ask about it and stuff, but I don't know anybody that has done it.
So, going back to the size on these animals and talking about like some of the old school 3-footers, is it common nowadays with the inbreeding and all the mutations we put into these animals to see a large reduced pattern anearthristic, or do you find they're staying at a smaller size now compared to what they used to be?
It seems to me like they're staying a little bit in the smaller range than what they used to be. I can remember huge normals and I've and stuff like that, and I've huge albinos and snows, and you just don't see them anymore. I think they're just they're staying more into the average range of what they grow to. But I do see, oddly enough, though, I do see a lot more like giant, oversized males than I used to. Like, it used to be unheard of to even hear of a male like 150 grams. I mean, it's not uncommon to see males, 200, even over 300 grams, which, never used to hear that. So, I don't know why the switch like that, but
Interesting. Well, and you guys, and I don't know, so it's not so much crossing species because you said a lot of them all got categories of the same species. Is it more subspecies you guys are considering it? Localities? How is that all being broken up right now?
There's localities like the Dodoma, and then everything else is now considered one species. Colubrinus. What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was going to say is I know you covered a lot of that earlier. I guess what I was the direction I wanted to kind of take that was, in the wild, what's the biggest species you guys have? Like, is the Kenyan typically going to be your largest of all the Sandboa varieties?
No, the Indian is probably the largest. Female Indians can reach close to 4 feet.
Okay. Now, did you say any of the original mutations were the Indians? Was that the original albino, or was that where did the original albino come from?
The original albino was an Egyptian.
Egyptian, yes. I'm sorry. Have the Indians been crossed into your basic Kenyans or anything like that from a mutation that may have come up in the wild, or has that not really been a cross that's common?
I don't think anybody's ever crossed Indians with anything. The Indians is a different species. I don't think anybody's ever crossed Indians with something.
Huh. I was just curious because, again, kind of talking about the size of the animals, and like you said, things are being mixed up or mixed a little bit. If there's something like, a certain part of Kenya, you have the population gets bigger. Like even in ball pythons, I can't remember where it's from, but there is a region where ball pythons get 2 or 3 times bigger, it almost looks like.
Yeah.
Absolute giant animals. And I can ask Mike, and maybe Benjamin knows, but quite bigger. So kind of like with the Kenyans, let's say, I didn't know if there was a certain area where maybe you were getting larger animals coming from it just based on the region.
There's probably areas where they are larger, but it's been so long since wild ones have been imported. I think it was like, the late 80s maybe was the last time, or early 90s was last time anything was. It's been so long, and at least, and also in that part of the world, it's so dangerous to collect because of the political unrest and everything, and like even that I don't know if anybody ever documented, like the only thing I know that's ever been documented is the Dodoma Valley stuff. But as far as anything else, I mean, they used to collect Egyptians and Kenyans, and it all used to be as the same thing. And, so, and they didn't really keep track of what actual region it came from and stuff. Is what I've been told. So, there's probably areas where they're larger, but until it's safe to go over there, I don't think we'll ever know for sure. So, I mean, I think fun as hell to traipse around looking for it. If I become a political prisoner, nobody's going to pay ransom for me. So,
no, probably not. I hate to say it. We're a bunch of cheapskates in this community, so you'll probably be stuck there.
Yeah, I mean, man. I don't think there'll be a special auction for ransom money.
No. Well, maybe not for me and you. There might be somebody else worthy in this hobby, but I don't think either of us falls in this category. But wishful thinking. But I mean, there is something to like. I would love to go down to South America and look for boas someday. Like, there's something about working with a species and getting to feed in the wild too. So, maybe the day will come where you can get your ass over to Africa and actually see something in the wild. But out of all the countries to go to, no offense to Africa, it's pretty fucking low on my list. I don't think I'll ever go to Africa. I joke around, but I don't think I'll ever go.
Africa's nice in some places.
Yeah, that's cool. I know you went to Africa. I've never really been like, hey, let's go to Africa. Just not really me. Again, but well, I think we're about the fuck about time where we can kind of just go in a bunch of different directions now.
Yeah.
Well, man. So again, you are locked in on Sandboas, but you do have a good appreciation for a lot of different reptile species. Like you said, you still get the thrill of seeing something new at a show. Um, Are you much into field herping? Are you in Illinois or are you in Missouri?
I'm in West Central Illinois.
Okay.
I've done very little field herping in my life. The one time I went when I was younger, I found a pregnant decay snake and a dead dog. That was the extent of my adventures herping. So,
That sounds like some herping trips. I feel like we've all experienced at least one or two dead dogs in our days out herping. We always find like when I go to a new town, I'll tell people, where does everyone throw your trash around here? Where are the mattresses? Where are the old couches? And when you go to areas like that, when people have disposable pets, let's put it that way, you tend to find a lot of pet remains in areas like that. Very sadly to say. It just kind of comes with the territory, but is what it is. So man, 30 years working with the same species, you're not bored of working with it, but if you were gonna kind of dabble in anything else at this point, I mean, is there another species that you've been fascinated by?
I do work with longicauda boas. I love them. Just the variety and just the color tones and stuff. If I had the time and stuff, I would work with crocodile lizards again. When I was young, um, I had a few of them and worked with them, and just had so much fun keeping them and stuff. I would keep the crocodile lizards again, the shortest. Um, uh, I mean, it all comes down to time and resources, but um, the Shinosaurus are probably one of my favorite things ever, besides the Sandboas. And when I was young, like early teens, I worked at a pet store. I lived up by Chicago, and the curator of reptiles from the Field Museum used to come in, because the owner of the pet store had a friend who got all kinds of, not even just rare reptiles, but amphibians, mammals. I mean, the guy could get anything. So he would get stuff, get bored with it, and he would bring it to the pet store. And we had Haitian dwarf boas, we had Chinese crocodile lizards. I mean, just strange stuff. And the guy from the Field Museum would come in every time we got crocodile lizards, and he would crocodile lizards, and he was just, I was like 14. I would get to have conversations with this. I mean, literally, the guy looked like kind of like Yoda almost, but this ancient, super knowledgeable guy from the Field Museum, the curator of reptiles, and he would just come in and hang out and just chat reptiles with me for hours, which my boss hated, but I didn't care. I was getting an education. That's what mattered. But it's been so long. He was doing studies with them and stuff, and just it was so neat to hear about the academic side and the studies this guy was doing with them and stuff. And but yeah, the Chinese crocodile lizards are probably the coolest thing besides Sambos, I think. So
Really cool. I do love the longicauda stuff. I don't know if you follow many people in that community, but I believe it's I can't remember her last name, but Allison down in Texas. She's also an artist. I know she does some Longicauda
Yep.
stuff. I believe she does have some aneurystic Longicaudas. And she just posted a picture the other day of one that was absolutely stunning. Like the whites on it were incredible. I love all the locality stuff in boas. The Brazilian Amarella I've always been one I've been a big fan of. But the Longicaudas, like you said, a very unique
She's
boa
got some
considering
amazing
the,
boas.
yes, big fan of her. Love her artwork too. She did a couple custom jobs for me over the years. Really great
Yeah.
person. And I got some of her at the Arlington show years ago.
I talk online number of times about Longicaudas and stuff, and yeah, really knowledgeable, really easy to talk to, and just amazing animals. She's got a great collection of Longicauda boas, as well as the other stuff, and just a neat person. So I actually, she did a drawing of, I forgot what it was, but it was one of her animal drawings. And I actually have the rattlesnake head from one of her drawings tattooed on my forearm. Um, I I saw the picture and I like messaged her. And I was like, "Hey, can I get that tattooed on me?" She's like, "Yeah, go ahead." So a friend of mine, or used to be a friend, tattooed it my arm for me. It was like a weird rattlesnake wing monster. I don't remember what the whole thing, just the way she had drawn the snake head, I really loved, so I got it on me. So
It's really cool. I kind of always say this about this community and this hobby. It's a very big community and a big hobby, but at the same time, it's really not. Like, we all are all kind of intertwined in a way where a lot of our, like, I would have never thought you knew her, and then to know her well enough that you got one of her or art pieces done as a tattoo, that's kind of fucking awesome. She did a piece of artwork for me. A buddy of mine's really into magic cards, so she turned my buddy into a magic card character, and he absolutely loved it. But no, like I said, big fan of her. Lucky to meet her years ago. I wouldn't have followed her if it wasn't for meeting her at the shows.
Super cool.
So
it's definitely a much smaller world in the reptile community. So, sorry, what?
Couldn't agree more. Oh no, you're good, man. You were breaking up a little bit. I was just waiting for the picture to kind of unfreeze.
Oh,
yeah. It's been a good connection. Benjamin's got a little editing to do after this, but that's when we pay him the big bucks, so I'm not too worried about it. So Scott, not to cut you short, our connection is definitely getting a little worse the further we go along on this. Do you feel fulfilled?
Okay.
Do you feel like we got a good amount of Sambo information in here? Or do you want to throw some more stuff at us before we call it?
Oh, we'll save it for another time. Well, I don't want to. I think we covered enough. So.
Nope. That's cool. And when Tinley rolls around again for the Sandboas show,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I always enjoyed the conversation, man. Like I said, I was happy to get Sandboas on here. We've been talking about getting them on. We talk about getting every species on here, but again, everybody that has seen a Sandboa typically likes a Sandboa. And I think they make great pets. I've sold some for friends in the past at shows, and I love when little kids come by and see them and get to handle them. And like you said, it's a little more of a species that doesn't really want to be handled, likes to be kept to itself. But like I said, the setup, having something that can dwell underneath sand enclosures, pop their head up, peek at you. A lot of little kids get a real thrill out of that.
With like I've got 5.5-year-old girls, and they each picked out a baby to keep. My litters this year, and they'll pick them up, they'll handle them, they'll carry them around, and the snakes get you to it. They do fine with it. Luckily they haven't bitten them yet, but they're little babies, so they can't do any damage or anything. But they're good to handle. They're easy to handle. You know, just with anything else, some like it, some don't. Some tolerate it, some don't. So, you know, I mean, God, I used to keep king snakes many years ago, and I never had one that liked to be handled. So,
yeah, typically don't.
Yeah, no, I find some are getting a little better nowadays, and I see people coming out to the shows with them. But back in the day, I feel like those things just bite the fuck out of you every chance they had. So, yeah. But
So
well, go ahead,
yeah,
Ben.
I appreciate you coming on, Scott. I really enjoyed it. I think it's good to get uh, more education on any species, and you've talked a lot about the kind of the basic stuff about it, which is good. But then also went into a lot of the detailed with the genetics and all, and where they're all from, and I really enjoyed it. I like in learning things, and yeah, maybe Sandboas will be the next big thing. Like I wonder what's that species. I mean, it does hit a lot of the good points. It doesn't get too big. They have a lot of morphs and colors. They're easy to maintain. They're readily available. I mean, and they're not terribly expensive. So yeah, I think that they're not a bad animal for a good pick for the next species that really hits it like a home run.
So, I really hate to be the bearer of bad news on this, and Scott, I hope you're not offended. The ball python is going to be the next thing for the next 20, 30 years. I really hate to say it. There's too many color variations. There's too many people in that game right now. And again, the greatest thing about that is a lot of ball python money does go in other species, but the reality is I wouldn't keep on talking about the next big thing, bud, because we're all doing it and we're going to be doing it for a while. There is not going to be a species that's going to step up anytime soon.
But they
I
can
really
still do
hate to
well.
break it to people. I don't think there's a next big thing because they've had a stranglehold for years, and I just don't think that stranglehold's going anywhere anytime soon.
Blue tongue skinks.
Blue tongue skinks are great, and they're. Oh, you're good, Scott. Go ahead,
if
bud.
Sandboas can be a solid third, if Sandboas can take a solid third place, I still think that's really damn cool. So,
well,
yeah.
let's just to put in perspective again about how big the hobby is. Scott, you produce how many Sandboas a year, would you say, on average?
I average probably 250 or so.
And do you ever have any trouble selling out every year?
No, not really. Some stuff will take a little longer to sell than others, but no, not really.
That's with everything. So again, this whole next big thing, not to shit on it, Ben, and be rude or media, just there's so much room for everything in this hobby. There's a buyer for just about everything we work with. This next big thing, man, we should just all accept it. It's a ball python. It's going to be a ball python. It's just the way it is. But again, it's such a broad hobby that you can produce 250 Sandboas and sell it every year. And I'm sure there's other people that are producing. Who are the big guys in Sandboas nowadays, man? I mean, I'm going to put you in that category. We know Holloway is. I really hate to say it. I only know a few names in the game right now when it comes to Sandboa breeding.
As far as like producing large amounts, I believe Mark Bell still produces quite a bit. There's Warren Treacher. He's in California. There's a lot of breeders, like smaller scale breeders that produce a lot of really neat morphs and mutations. Jo Beth Davis and Kate Luttrell both are, most people would consider smaller scale breeders, but both of them produced some amazing animals this year. Jo a year with some really patternless anery, and she produced some really nice HRP aneries and striped splatters and some other stuff. Kate Luttrell produces gorgeous rough scales, and she produced a really, really cool litter of HRP aneries and snows that are just some of the most reduced pattern ones that have ever been produced. And I don't think anybody's produced HRP snows yet. And she's got some that are just so reduced. It's incredible. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of, like Brady Hill or not Tommy Hill produces a lot of really good stuff. Nelson produces a lot of amazing stuff, good paradoxes, HRPs and stuff. There's a gentleman named Ross Carter that produces amazing high expression parallel in California. She was the first one to produce the double albino and paradox albino, and she's still working with those and has produced some amazing ones. She's also got calico paradox albinos that she's working with. She produces a lot of neat stuff. Pamela Radcliffe in California, she produces a lot of really cool paradox albinos and paradox snows, patternless snows, and she makes a lot of neat babies. Rufus Darden produces not only a lot of great Kenyans, but Black Russian Sandboas as well. He produced some albinos this year, and he actually produced a Black Russian albino that looks like an actual albino, whereas most of the albino Black Russians that have been produced look like they might be more of actually a snow. And I think we talked a little bit about this briefly, and I had a conversation with a gentleman that produced some this year. And Brady Nelson has produced a whole bunch of albino Black Russians, and like Rufus has produced an actual orange albino one, whereas everyone else's are kind of like cream and tan and stuff, more like a snow would look. But there's a lot of great smaller scale breeders out there doing a lot of neat stuff. And I think I got sidetracked again, but
okay. So Benjamin's falling asleep, but I got one more thing I want to talk to you about. Just because you brought it up. Yeah, you look like your little sleepy face over there, bud. So the Black Russians, we were discussing the albinos popping up, and the one breeder that came up in conversation who actually just posted them on Facebook today or yesterday was Vin Russo. And I know Vin Russo stock was kind of older stock.
yeah.
Was it a very small gene pool you guys were working with that species that it seems like everyone has albinos popping up from normal breeding?
It was a very small group. There was only like one real Russian Sandboa breeder, and Bruce Miller was his name. Like for a little while, 30 years ago, there were Black Russians coming in, not in great numbers, but they were also bringing in like Tartars, and everything was called a Russian back then. The only person that was reproducing them in captivity was Bruce Miller. So pretty much, at least all the Black Russians and stuff, the majority of them came from him. And so yeah, I think that's why albinos are starting to pop up, is because it was such a small founding group of them that it's bound to happen.
And the Black Russians by themselves are absolutely incredible.
If albino is actually the term, because they come from. Oh, they're gorgeous. I mean, they're not much prettier than a jet black snake, really. That sounded weird, but Yeah, the black Russians by
Incredible.
themselves are gorgeous, but when the albino ones are just neat, and there's such a variety between the different people that have produced them, that there's such a variety of them in appearance. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Be interesting to see if those different albino looks are compatible, or if it's different types of albinos. So
So the last thing about this topic, when did the first albino pop up, and has anybody had a chance to start breeding the albinos they've made?
The first albino, I know I produced a few. Oh, it's got to be 8 or 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And then they didn't survive long, because baby Russians are really difficult to get feeding sometimes. And then I think I want to say it was Jeff Holloway that produced the next one, but there was also a gentleman in Minnesota named Chris Smith that produced some albinos also. And his came from animals that I had produced and sent to him. But yeah, I believe a couple people have bred the albinos that they've produced. I could be wrong, but I think Brady was able to use one this year.
Okay.
And then Jeff's project has gone on to someone else, and I think they were able to. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they might have been able to use the albinos that had been produced. I'm not 100% sure if they did or not. But if they haven't, I mean, they've all got to be getting to the age where they're ready to breed. And the males will mature at a year or less. The females, it takes 3-4 years. But if they haven't been used, I got to imagine by next year they would be. So
Okay. I mean, I'd be curious to see what happens to that project. And I think that's another animal that when we were talking, I made a comment about the eye color on the albino that Vin Russo made, or the snow, because I think he was questioning if it was the snow, but that was another animal that had a solid black or blue eye instead of your typical pink eye like you'd have an albino. Still don't fully understand why it works that way genetically with these guys, but it seems to be pretty common with them, even with different species.
that was one of those that Vin and I had talked about. The eye color, because the eye color is more typical of a snow. And I guess we've all just sort of assumed that they're albinos, but since they come from black Russians, which are an amelanin or an anarthristic animal, would they be more accurately described as snows? So I don't know, because the black Russians are just a natural, as far as I know from what I learned from Dave Sorensen back when, the black Russians are just a naturally occurring dark population from the northern part of the range. Darker, they can thermoregulate better. If it's a natural occurring anarthristic form, maybe snow is a more accurate term than albino. And like I said, produced one that actually has the body color of what an albino animal would normally look like. So, but he produces black Russians and cinnamons and stuff. The regular colored Russian Sandboas. So, hopefully, stuff gets outcrossed. Maybe people can trade some hets and see what happens. And we can figure it out. So, but either way, it's a very neat thing to have happen. So, especially when it pops up so randomly with so many people.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I was really intrigued by the conversation we had, is just how many people have had that pop up in their collection, because, you know, the reality is we could breed snakes our entire life and not ever have anything pop up, and to have so many people have that same mutation is pretty unique. But no, that's awesome, man. I mean, that one did catch my eyes. I've always liked, again, the Black Russians. I've always thought were really unique. I think I may have seen them on your table in the past at Tinley and walked by a couple times, questioned if I should buy them. But like I said, me back in the day bought everything and bought everything in pairs. Me nowadays, I really try not to be overly addicted to what I'm doing, I guess you could say. Like, I've got a lot more willpower now than I did 10 years ago.
It's way easier to get addicted to stuff now because of the colors and the patterns and stuff. It's so easy to go overboard with it, which, you know, it's a lot harder to have willpower nowadays. But I didn't even know Vin Russo kept Sandboas. I think it's freaking awesome that he keeps Sandboas. I mean, I've gotten boas from him in the past and stuff, and I think it's really cool to keep Sandboas too. So
yeah,
it was really neat to find out. But
yeah, I've said this in the past. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, ball pythons and, you know, everything else, you know, even colubrids. There's so much more color and pattern variety with, like, you know, just Honduran milk snakes. I mean, the variety of what's produced now is just, I mean, you could end up hundreds of Hondurans easily. You know, it's just, it's so hard not to get addicted to the varieties of what's out there with things. So
yeah. No, I agree. I just picked up my first trio of Hondurans from Andy Watson out in Colorado 2 years ago. A very aberrant pattern animal, straight black and straight orange, really unique, unlike anything I ever saw before. And that was one of those ones when I went to a show, I just kept going over to that table over and over and over again. And by the time the day was over, I had to take them with me. And Hondurans are another one too. You know, that's something I really love to talk about in this podcast. We're not trying to find a Honduran guy soon, but so variable, such bright colors, and they were a staple in this hobby for the longest time years ago. There were some really big money Honduran projects that people wouldn't even really know about nowadays.
Yeah.
I can remember when I can remember when Hondurans were still imported regularly, and you could find so many just different appearances just in what was being brought in from the wild. It was amazing. So
I can't tell if we're all just staring at each other.
I think so.
Okay, we peaked. That was a peak right there. I'm sorry. Yeah, our connections are getting kind of rough here. We're not getting all we can out of each other. Scott, we are gonna let Benjamin sound us off because he knows all the links and all the everything. Now we know you have a Facebook page, which we'll make sure to put a link up for you. No.com, nothing else, nowhere else you want me to send traffic your way. Morph Marketplace for your ads. Somebody wanted to buy a Sambo from you. Where do we go, bud?
you could either go to Morph Market. I've gotten in that and stuff on there. Mostly I do a lot of my stuff private message through Facebook. But either Morph Market or Facebook is where to find me. So
okay, cool. Well, Benjamin, it's your time to shine, buddy.
Thank you so much, Scott, for coming on, and we appreciate you coming on. You guys have been
Thank
watching.
you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. You guys have been watching Sandboas with Scott Miller, and yeah, thank you guys so much for watching or listening. If you're out there listening, make sure you guys are sharing, and subscribing. Tell your family, tell your friends to listen, and reach out to us. Comment down below if you have any questions or you have anything that you want to ask us, and we will try to get back to you. We try to answer everybody on this YouTube channel. And thank you so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Have a great night, everybody, and make Sandboas the next big thing. Make Sandboas great again.
Thanks again, Scott. Honestly,
thanks, guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.